On today's episode of Locked On Avalanche, we take a bunch of listener questions, and not surprisingly, a lot revolve around trades. So let's talk about it. New episode of Locked On Avalanche coming at you.
You're Locked On Avalanche, your daily podcast on the Colorado Avalanche, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Locked On Avalanche podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Chris Maselli. With me, as always, Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. Thank you for tuning in and making this your first listen of the day. That is always appreciated. And if you want to get in on the conversation, join our subtext. The link to that's in the show notes below. Chat with Kyle and I one-on-one. We get your opinion, everything Avalanche related, which we share on this very podcast. For this episode, we get their listener questions as well. A bunch coming in from subtext. A bunch coming in from Instagram as well. So we figured, now would be a good time to really get the fan base thought process, what's going on in their minds. And obviously, timing of doing these things is always interesting, because when you do it following a weekend like the Avalanche just had, you can imagine where the questions go and the tone of the questions, where they go. And then you can imagine the opposite when the Avs are doing well. So we'll answer, like, we have a couple days before the Avs are playing, obviously on Wednesday. So we have this show. We can probably get to some more tomorrow's show. We'll see how all this goes, but because there's a lot, fans are they want their voices heard, Kyle.
Why, Chris? Why?
And we are here to try to do that as best as we can. But I don't know if it's going to change anybody's minds. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, at this point, we all need to just sit around in a circle and we need to talk. We all just kind of need to talk.
Because being a fan is, you're invested, and it maybe sometimes a little bit too much. But I'm not going to tell someone, hey, sports are, they can lift you up and they can drag you down. And that's always the case for sports. And when it's down, people make their voices loud. And like I said, the same is true for when things are going on the opposite way and going well. But just having a weekend like the Avalanche had, you can imagine how things are.
And Chris, we've been around for 100,000 years. We're borderline museum fodder. And like, you could tell, like, the fans that are kind of new, who jumped in at 2022, who's seen the dark days, who have seen, like, the glory days back in the 90s, like what this used to be, and just the different perspectives on where this team is, I find just thrilling and fascinating all at the same time.
And, obviously we got a lot about trades. Who could be moved? Can you move this guy? Who could you bring in? Can you bring in this guy? And we can't answer every single one of those. So we're trying to, like, kind of lump a lot of those together. And the way that Cody, this is over from Subtext, asked it is
my new best friend.
Yes, your new best friend Cody. He'll be taking over the show pretty soon. The way he asked it, I appreciate the way he asked it, and because you got a lot of just like, when are we trading Middlestat, stuff like that. But he said, would you be surprised if the Avs tried to revamp and or replace half of their middle six right now? And I think that's a more kind of like, thought-provoking way to bring up a trade question rather than just say, get rid of this guy. It's an interesting question, because how much do the Avalanche deal? And because I'm thinking, like, hey, they did their big trade with Mikko and with Blackwood, if you want to go that, like that that it feels like they're done making the big trades. And with Chris McFarland saying, we're not deep enough, I mean, that's just, red flags going off, just saying, like, that's what they're going to address. Middle six could be part of that, maybe bottom six more than middle six. But when you're throwing Casey Middlestat in there too, that's middle six, obviously. So could it be middle and bottom? But a total revamp of it right now would be an interesting move for the Avalanche, because if you're revamping and bringing in a bunch of guys with not a lot of cohesion, not a lot of games played together, and you don't have a lot of games left before the playoffs start, I don't know if that's a road they want to go down right now. But what do you think?
Honestly, and especially with names that we're going to be thrown out and probably going to be factors in a lot of these trade talks. We don't know what's going to be the end story on Gabe Landeskog and or Val Nichushkin. And you don't know if Val's coming back, when he's coming back. We keep hearing soon-ish, but we've heard that about Landeskog.
Be there Wednesday.
We've
be there.
We've heard that about Landeskog for years too. But those are contracts that really, when they do come back, kind of limit you on quote unquote revamping the team. Like if you're making pieces, I don't like if you're going for pieces at the trade deadline. Now, in the off season, this is a serious conversation depending on how the season ends.
Exactly.
But in the middle of the season, you got to really kick the tires and stand back, take off your burgundy and blue glasses and say, can this team do it this year?
Right.
And if you believe they can, you put the team together to do that. But if you're going to just say, no, they can't, then get all the value you can and just get to the end of the season and then revamp in the offseason.
Right. That's exactly what I was going to say. Like, you don't do a revamp now with, you're in a playoff spot and with, despite how things are going for the Avalanche right now, which is just so up and down, you're not just throwing in the towel right now. If you did, like you said, then fine. But I don't think the Avalanche are in that mode. Like, they wouldn't have made the moves they made earlier. They wouldn't have made the deal with Mikko earlier. I don't feel like they would have done that. I don't think they would have even gone after goaltending if they were just like, nah, we're just going to see what we got for this year and then address all that stuff in the offseason. But the fact that they made those moves, like, you can't make those moves and now all of a sudden throw in the towel and just be like, we're not going to make a go for it. You do that in the offseason. So like a total revamp, I don't think can happen. This is where you add pieces. And you did it with the Mikko deal, not just with the Martin Nishis deal trade, but with the Jack Drury. Like, that's what you're going to do. You're going to see more of that. The big deals for the Avalanche, I don't think are coming in this trade deadline. It's going to be addressing the pieces of the depth. I wouldn't call it a total revamp because I don't think they're in that mode right now to do that. They're going to have to live with a lot of the guys that they have on this team and just hope things click. That's all they can hope for, and we love that stat. That's like, whoever wins the President's Trophy rarely wins the Stanley Cup. Avs are banking on that happening again this year in their favor. So, and that's the thing with hockey. Like, once you get into the playoffs, yes, anything is possible. You want to be playing good hockey going into the playoffs. We're not there yet, obviously, but do the deals that the Avalanche make get them playing more consistent hockey going into the playoffs? That remains to be seen. We don't know the moves that they made. We're not at the end of the year yet, but it is around the corner. So we'll see something happen soon here.
And I would keep an eye out on really what the direction and the temperature of this team is, depending on if this is finally the year they start picking up rentals just to get to the end of the year. They don't usually do they don't do that. But if you feel like this team could make a push, and if they don't, you're really losing nothing by getting these rentals. And you're going, and you mentioned that Mikko trade, and also McFarland saying this team isn't deep enough. If you're not paying for Mikko Rantanen, you have money to pay for a deeper team, but you pay for them at the end of the season when free agency opens up and the market opens up, not when you're trying to trade. So if they start putting together like rentals in these trades, that could tell a lot on what this offseason is going to look like for the Colorado Avalanche.
It's kind of why I have the second bullet point over there if you're watching on YouTube about it. This is, are the Avs in a type of limbo of what to do? And you heard Cale Makar's comments the other day saying, like, we as players have to prove to the people in the front office that we are investable. Like, yes, go make those moves because we can do this. And I thought that was a really good statement from him and a really telling statement from him, because that tells me, and this is no surprise, the players know. Players know that they're not holding up their end of the bargain. So for him to say that, like, it does it put not the players, but where's the mindset of the front office? Are they in that limbo area of what do we do? Do we make a go of this or not? I think they absolutely do. I honestly don't think it's a question. I think they 100% are invested in this team, and you are going to see some moves made to give them the best possible chance to go win a cup. I know it sounds crazy. I know it, because the way that they're playing is not Stanley Cup hockey, but there's still time in the season to go address that stuff and bring in specific players. And you just have to hope those deals work out. There's a question here from McKinnon29 asking about specific guys, two in particular. Should the Avs really pursue one Brock Nelson or Braden Shen, or would it be better to stick with Casey Middlestat? This goes to kind of what we were just talking about. Stay the course or make the moves. And you're going to hear Casey Middlestat's name over and over and over again for the next couple of weeks. And I'm honestly 50-50 on it of what I think the Avalanche could do. You've heard Brock Nelson's name maybe a little bit more than Braden Shen. Both those guys are older than Middlestat, making more money than Middlestat. That comes into play too. You know, the cap obviously comes into play. So you know, if you're moving Middlestat out, those two teams, the Islanders and the Blues, would have to retain some money. So that obviously comes into play with any deal. But yeah, that's a question the Avalanche are going to have to ask and answer. Is Middlestat the guy? And that could be, again, what you were saying, like, we'll ride it out for this year. And then if it doesn't go, if it just keeps the way that it is or gets worse, then we'll adjust it in the offseason.
You know what? I want to take that question from McKinnon29, what you just said, and the second bullet point, blend it all to one, and give you one beautiful answer after this break.
I cannot wait for that. So I'm not going to wait any longer. Let's do that next. But first, we're going to hear from Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday, just like the Avalanche needed to make a trade yesterday. But how can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. And when it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. And now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/locked-on right now and support Locked On Avalanche by saying you heard about Indeed on this very podcast. Terms and conditions apply. And of course, if you're hiring, Indeed is all you need, Kyle. Okay. I think we're good. We had some technical difficulties coming out of the ad read there, but let's get back onto track here. And you were going to make some comments on McKinnon29's statement, kind of meld everything together. Go for it.
Yeah, and you brought up Cale Makar's comments about you got to prove to be investable. Well, that's cute. That's adorable. Thank you, baby Cale, for those beautiful words. But we also had the same conversation when Mikko Rantanen was traded. Like, nobody's safe. And after those last two games that you saw, did anybody look like they cared about their job security when it came to like effort? And you talk about investable talents, and like McKinnon29 is talking about bringing in Brock Nelson, and I've heard like, why don't we bring in one of the Tanevs, and we need a good fire guy. How about Trouba's out there? Let's get some physicality. No, like,
yeah,
bringing those guys into a roster where you had back-to-back pedestrian efforts. Is that going to change anything? Like, even for everything we were touting, like Marty Necas coming back from the break has been relatively quiet as well. Not that, I
mean, it's 2 games. I don't want to.
But I understand. But you also, like, the Mikko Rantanen shot heard round the world, saying, "Hey, we need this money. We're not going to play this game." And one of the going on almost 4 years in a row of 100 points, traded him right out to Carolina, where he's going to be bouncing around the NHL for who knows how long. But you think the rest of the team would be stepping up into this moment. And it comes to like those questions that we get, like, what do we trade for? Who do we trade for? Well, what do you do for this team? What is the be all end all fix? Because could a Brock Nelson, he's about as he's a vanilla as he is. He's great, but he's not he's not going to change the complexion of this team. He's just going to give you more push and skill, but he's not like a dynamic type talent.
You're right, but that's the Avs don't they have that already.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
That's what I'm
So
saying. You
yeah,
have
so
it's all faded. Like everybody you're wanting to get are currently on the Avalanche. It's just faded.
but I think the reason why you make trades is clearly to make your team better in the world that the Avalanche are in right now. Like on the other end, teams make trades for other reasons, for future, moves, and can help you down the road. The Avs right now, any deals that they want to make are to make themselves better. And so, yeah, to answer your question, like, yeah, that's why you make those deals. Like, does it make you better? Is it going to catapult you up the standings and make you, that number one team in the league for the Avalanche? Not right now, no. But they're in a different world of we need to make moves that will put us in the best situation and best position once the playoffs hits. That's where the Avalanche are living right now. Not this, we need to ascend the standings. Like that if that happens, that takes care of itself with any moves. You're not worried about that. What you're worried about is we need to be better tomorrow than we are today. Or in the case of the trade deadline, we need to be better post trade deadline than we are pre trade deadline. And if you can answer that question after moves are made and it's yes, then that's all you can really do at this stage in the game. Because the moves that were from before the season started in the off season and started this year, and it was a rough start to the year, have not panned out. Some of them have not panned out, and now you need to address it. So it's not like the season. And we had other questions of, should do you forego the all in at the trade deadline with the recent stretch of play? No, the Avalanche are not going to waste years of Nathan MacKinnon, Cale Makar, and guys like them, even Taves, if you want to say, like, they're not going to waste those seasons. They are going to put the best possible team out there. I didn't say best team in the league. I said best possible team out there to go fight in the playoffs, because we've seen it before in NHL playoffs. Anything is possible once you get there. And if they have a better team after the trade deadline, they will feel like we've seen it how many times. Let us be that team this year. And it could all fall apart too, Kyle. I'm not saying like it's going to happen, but right now they are in both sides of the coin right now. And just knowing how this team operates, they're going to go for it.
Well, I get that. I really do. I understand, but that discussion on just wait and see, like we did that with the goalies, and we've done that with so many players, and we've done that with the Avalanche, where it's just wait until all these pieces get together, and we keep saying, like, there's this carrot that we keep dangling that everything's got to fall perfectly for this team. This team just can't win games against Nashville and St. Louis.
Right.
Like you're trying, on one hand, you're saying, wait till this team gets to the playoffs, wait till they get healthy, wait. But even as they are currently roster construction, they should be handling teams like St. Louis and Nashville after resting for 2 weeks. Like 80% of that team was rested and ready to go. And Cale Makar, Nathan MacKinnon, and Taves had an emotional high coming into that game. And they didn't look fatigued. So they, like, on paper, they should have handled those 2 games. And those were some pedestrian efforts where they went out, scored their goal, and let it go. So it's hard to say keep waiting and like looking to the future and spinning this perfect scenario when everything they're putting on the ice is just not there and it's not translating. So if that's where my big like aggravation is saying this is a great team, but then I watch them on the ice and it's sleepy efforts and not fired up, and how quickly we forgot Mikko was a part of this team and he's been traded away, and that was supposed to fire him up. How many this will fire him up kind of things do we need for this team to start playing hockey and just win games? That's all we're asking them to do, and they can't even do that. And now they're in a losing streak.
I think, bringing up how you said, like, you're losing to teams like Nashville's at the bottom of the standings, and St. Louis, who's behind you, Chicago, you've lost to. Like, yeah, you can look at that and you can go one of 2 ways with it. You can either say, like, not our year, or you can say, we need to make changes and just give it our best go. And I think that's what the Avalanche are going to do. Because you give that impression. Look how it's gone in Pittsburgh. You know what I mean? Like Pittsburgh they didn't really make moves a couple of years ago. Now they're struggling to get anything back. And you really wonder if that plays with the minds of the players who stayed there. You tell this team right now, you tell this Avalanche team right now, like we're not going to make a lot of deals, guys. So whatever we have this year, we're going to go for it. And then you fall back and you fall out of a playoff spot. That's just going to mess with this team. That's going to mess with the heads of kind of the depth guys, and maybe not the Nathan McKinnons of the world and the Cale Makars, but that will mess with guys' heads of, man, we have a front office that doesn't want to go for it.
Well, that's all the Avalanche have done is make moves. We talked about the Rijo thing last year and Tatar and getting rid of those, and then the goalies this year and bringing in guys and like P.E. Belmar, let's bring him on for a tryout. Like all these random moves, like in and out, like all they do is make moves, and then you turn back around and it's still the same effort. That's why I was talking about McKinnon 29. Like it's going to be like 5 games of like the Natchez effect. Like, oh my goodness, this is what we're talking about. Once these guys get going, and then this is what you get, and you're just like,
yes. But what you said is like all they do is make moves. I'm happy that the Avalanche have a front office that, and I've said this before, if there is a need, they go get it. It doesn't always work out, and that's a whole other conversation to have, but you cannot fault them for sitting on their hands. At least they go out and make the moves. And I think you're going to see it again. I think they're just built to want to compete at the best possible level that they can with the best possible team. And I think you're going to see more deals, and we'll see what happens. That's all we're at right now. So, yeah, go ahead.
And that's the difference between Pittsburgh and Colorado. Is Pittsburgh, they're not expected to ever do anything. Like you have Sidney Crosby
at this stage in the game, right? But they were the team for a long time.
But the Avalanche, every year you ask who's your favorite to win the Stanley Cup, the Avalanche are always thrown in that mix.
Sure.
So when you can't beat the teams you're supposed to beat, like Anaheim, Columbus, Chicago, and you have games to get Nashville and St. Louis go like this, that's why it's so frustrating. Like you make the moves, no improvement really, no matter who's in that lineup, top to bottom, and you're always predicted to be Stanley Cup champion or make some like headway in the playoffs when you get there, and you never do. It's frustrating. It's like you're digging your hole and you're getting the dirt and putting it right back in the hole. It's very frustrating.
So, don't feel like this is the last time we're talking about this for a trade deadline, but let's we had some fun ones, some fun questions that we got in. So we'll take a quick little break and answer those on the other side of it. All right. Where this is Avs fan forever asked, where is it here? I want to know your theories, however implausible they might be, on how we get McKinnon and Crosby to play on the same team again on a permanent basis. The chemistry the two had was evident. If you stick around to the end of all our episodes, you know how we end every episode. It's a fun thing. And I'm on the fence of like 50-50 of it ever, probably even maybe 60-40 of it ever happening. I don't really think it will, but never say never. And the way things are going in Pittsburgh, that only kind of just adds fuel to the fire of, hey, could this eventually happen where Pittsburgh at some point needs to start preparing for their future. And when they have, a legendary player that maybe only has a couple of years left, what is he really going to do here? Could it? I mean, sure, it could happen, but what? I mean, he says, the theories. This just has all the makings of like Ray Bourque 2.0, and that deal was they got Bourque, and it was who was it, Anderchuk, I believe it was. I have the deal up here. I think it was Dave Anderchuk. Yeah, it was Dave Anderchuk, and the Avs gave up 3 players in a first round pick. So they gave up 3 players in first round pick to get 2 players.
Was it Jonesy one of those guys in that deal?
No, it was for forwards Brian Ralston, Martin Grenier, and Sammy Folson.
Not Folson.
And yeah, so and Boston had a choice of first round picks. They could either
Oh.
do it in 2000 or 2001. So that was then. I don't know if it would be something similar, but it might be like they're going to want picks because you're giving up a player like that. They're going to want picks. They're going to want maybe a prospect and maybe some current players. You might have to go like all three levels. You might have to give them like a current player, a prospect, and a first round pick, and maybe that's like that's the starting point here. And the thing is, you're only really going to get Crosby for depending on it, when you. It's not going to be this year. If it's next year, you're only going to get them for. That's why I'm saying this could be Bork 2.0. Where you only get them for a couple of years. So we'll see. We'll see. I do have hope that something could happen down the road, but not too far down the road because there's not much left.
That honestly, if this was going to happen, it would have to be this deadline. Like this would be the perfect storm, especially
for the Avs. It would be the best because they get the most out of them, right?
And you could deal. This is where you put Malinsky, possibly, and Middlestat in that deal, and a pick, and you get Crosby. Insert defender name here from Pittsburgh, but do it. And like you say, Bork 2.0, the same thing. Like you make that push, see how it works in the playoffs, and then Mission 16W 2.0, rebuild the team around Nathan McKinnon and Sidney Crosby, and go get the thing next year.
I mean, it would be nice for this year. I just don't feel like he's on the market this year right now. And honestly, in Pittsburgh world, they're probably not even entertaining this right now. But things change. And we'll see what happens. So another thing I don't think that'll be the last time we talk about that. I got a couple questions on this. Madam Battle asked it. There's somebody over on Instagram that asked it as well. And the way she phrased it, do you think after this season Bednar will still be with the Avs? And there was, other people did ask. You feel like he's on the hot seat? I don't think that seat is hot at all. I think the Avs are more than satisfied with how he coaches this team, with how he has dealt with the endless list of injuries just year in and year out, and how he consistently has this team in the thick of things. And this year is another year. It's a difficult year, but look, he's still got him in a playoff spot. So throw out that first year because that was just really unfair to him. And every other year he's in the playoffs. And obviously he's got a cup under his belt. They got a President's Trophy. Like he's the most wins in franchise history. I sent a message to someone on the side who agreed with how I answered them in that question. And I said, I just don't feel like the Avalanche want to be in that world where there's the revolving door for coaches.
Yeah.
And they're happy that they're not. And they got a really good one with Jared Bednar. And at the first sign of struggle, we're just gonna blow everything up. And we did that with Ray Bennett with the power play. It's just like the second there's just a little bit of friction, get rid of everybody. Well, it's not how it really works.
I will raise it to you this way. I don't think he will not be joining the team next year. I think he's Cooper-like when it comes to tenure and impact on the team. But there is that risk. Like I would say his seat is a touch warm, noticeable, but not like hot. And this is concerning because is the message getting stale when it comes to the effort level? That's a legitimate question. But then if things, let's say they continue like this and miss the playoffs, you don't fire McKinnon, you fire Bednar.
I don't think you fire anybody.
But no, I get that. I get that.
Right.
But if you have run out of gimmicky things to get this team fired up, that's what you do. But the problem is, who wants to coach Nathan McKinnon? And I think that's the thing about like how we always talk, nobody ever gives too much praise or criticism to Bednar, is because the rest of NHL coaches don't want to have to manage Nathan McKinnon on the bench, and they just let Jared Bednar be, and they just be quiet, say nothing.
Yeah.
He's got him quiet. He has to deal with him. That's not our problem. I think there's a whole league-wide thing where they just don't want to have to deal with Nathan McKinnon, and you don't expect people lining up out the door to coach that job because you just fired Jared Bednar and you're following that up, and Nathan McKinnon's probably not happy.
He's probably not going to be happy, yeah. But I would have to think there would be a line of coaches who do want to coach somebody like that. I don't think they would be afraid of it. I think they'd see it as a challenge to coach somebody like that. But you're right. I think there's always going to be a moment where, is the message not getting through anymore? And that, that was true I thought Mike Shanahan was going to be a lifer for the Denver Broncos. And they just got to a point where they couldn't do it anymore. You're seeing that now with Mike Sullivan in Pittsburgh. Is that wearing that moment will come? It's not right now for Jared Bednar. It's not. I don't feel like it is, and I still think that he's one of the best coaches in the league, and I think the Avalanche know that. And even if they do miss the playoffs, this will be the first time that he does. To not give him a redemption season to see what you can do next year, turn around. We'll give you a better team. That's the front office's job. He can only coach with the players that the front office goes and gets for him. So if we're all up in arms about mad at Chris McFarland and he's not doing his job, well, then it makes Jared Bednar's job just as tough. So I don't. Right now, no. I'm sure there are people that do think that it is. I'm not going there. So that's just where we're at.
It's warmer. It's the warmest it's ever been.
Maybe by a degree. I'll give you 1 degree Fahrenheit. Other than that, you're not getting much from me on that topic. She does ask too, are we grape or strawberry jelly people?
I am a grape because I like the peanut butter and jelly combo thing. Yeah. Like it's in the same jar. And that's usually always grape. Yeah, that stuff is the bomb.
Oh boy.
So yeah.
I love regular strawberries. I don't like strawberry jam for some reason. I'd rather grapes but it's interesting because with grapes, I prefer the green grapes and not the purple grapes.
Oh, I like the purple.
Yeah.
But my granny used to make apple jelly, and that stuff was the bomb.
Oh, that sounds good. That sounds really good.
Mm-hmm.
There was another question here. We got a lot. We're gonna have to make this a 2-parter because we have a lot of questions from people. So there was one from electrician Ziggy, and he goes, as a fan of hockey for only 3 years now, so he's a newbie. Please explain icing to me. Like, I know when I see the more obvious stuff, but there are some times where a player from both teams are neck and neck racing to the puck and they still call it. And I just don't understand those situations. What are the signs to point to a play being called icing in those situations? So I think he knows what icing is, but he's asking the 50-50. It's almost like a tie goes to the runner. Like if they feel like, they're just neck and neck, what they should do, or what they're supposed to do, not what they should do, what they're supposed to do is who has the opportunity to get that puck first. And they don't always do that. They will do, if it's neck and neck, they are just going to blow it dead. And Ziggy, if you're living in a world of hockey for only 3 years, you've missed an entire time where this is all new. Of just once it crosses that line, the player just has to get to the face-off dots before they blow it dead. There was a time where you had to go touch that puck and you would get injuries because 2 guys would be barreling down and you knew it was icing, but they'd have to go and physically touch the puck in that zone for it to be called icing. And because of the injuries, they just got rid of it, which in the beginning, people didn't like that, but I think it was the right move.
And Ziggy, also, a lot of those times that those 50-50s don't go your way, the first thing you need to do is the vantage point of the referee. 9 times out of 10, when those 50-50s don't go the way of the deserved party, usually the referee is sitting at the blue line and trying to make his way in the play. He doesn't have a good view on it, and he just out of default will rule. But trust me, on television, you get a better vantage point. Those referees are usually not in the right spot.
Yeah, I mean, they're really good skaters, but they're usually trailing a play most of the time because those are like the linesmen, and they will, they're usually behind it. So, and I think they're just erring on the side of caution of injury. So, and the last one we'll do today, Heather asked if we had any funny hockey related stories of personal experience or with our kids or anything like that. Well, oddly enough, like my kids, are not like super into hockey right now. Like my son is a little bit, but I think he just does it so he doesn't have to go to bed. Like whenever like it's like bedtime and I'm watching a game, like, oh, I want to sit down with dad and watch the game. And then he'll sit down with me for like 10 seconds. And then like, it's just like his ploy to get away from not going to bed. So like kids wise, like they're into it, but not like super duper into it right now. But for personally, like, some like there's always one, and I haven't played with this one specifically like in years, but they always did the it was closest to Halloween day, and it was dress up however you want to dress up. So those are just that's the funnest day that I looked forward to, because you would just, instead of two teams and jerseys, it's and we play with females too. So you have Elsas out there, and you have, just any normal costume you can think of. We've had like bears. One dude was dressed up as like as a bear, and I don't even want to know what the inside of that thing smelled like at the end of the game.
Throw it away.
Oh my god! But it's just so funny to just when your shift is over and you're sitting on the bench just watching all of these random costumes just skating back and forth and scoring goals. It's hilarious.
Yeah, my kids are 13 and 11 now. Watching the Avs with them, especially over this weekend, they'll watch the first two periods, and then I'll put them to bed, and my daughter will ask me first thing, so how'd the Avs do? I'll be like, well, they lost. My daughter will be like, you're joking. And then
so she's like, they don't lose.
Yeah. She's like, you're joking. And she's like, what about that Cale Makar guy?
Yeah.
That's what she calls him, that Cale Makar guy. Because their memory in 2022 was the Avs won the Stanley Cup, and we had a parade around the neighborhood. We made makeshift Stanley Cups. We all put on our jersey and played all the small things up and down every street of the neighborhood.
That's right. Yeah.
So my kids were engaged but in the game, but they're also keeping track of, are the Avalanche good? Are we going to have to do another parade? We're older now, and everything's embarrassing that dad does. So
my son will try to, like, if the game is on and they have like the score bug, and he knows COL is Colorado. He knows that immediately. He knows their colors. Like he knows that. He always tries to guess what the other team is. Or if I'm watching just a random game and there's two teams, one of them is not Colorado, he'll try to guess what the three letters up there means. And they're almost always not a city.
Yeah.
It's like one time, like I think it was Chicago, and he thought that was the Cheaters. I was like, hey, bud, you're not far off.
Nope, not wrong.
But the stuff that he comes up with on what those three letters mean, I got to start writing them down, because it's one of those things where it's like, where do you come up with that stuff? How did you, what's going on in your mind where that's what you thought of? Because it's hilarious, and it's nothing that I would ever think of. So
I'll fire off a lot of what my preteen daughter her summaries of the game. I'll fire those off in a tweet, because they're the most just outstanding summaries of players and teams that I can never come up with myself.
Yeah. It's good stuff. So, all right, we'll wrap it up here. We have more to get to, obviously. So we'll do another mailbag tomorrow with a lot more topics covering the Avs. So we'll do that. And anything else that's going on in Avs Nation, we'll cover that too. So that'll be tomorrow. Tune in for that. But thank you for tuning in to this one and making it your first listen of the day. Always appreciated. He is Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. I am Chris Maselli. This is the Locked On Avalanche podcast, where, yes, you are one day closer, Sidney Crosby being a Colorado Avalanche.
But for who?